Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. On the 15th of August last year, Prime Minister Modi said, "I have an unwavering belief that in 2047, when India celebrates 100 years of independence, India will be a developed country." Then in December 2023, his government rolled out a Viksit Bharat 2047 initiative, a roadmap to making India completely developed by 2047. Now, a key component of this initiative is the ambitious goal of elevating India to the rank of the world's third largest economy within the next 5 years. Now, the union budget is around the corner, and Prime Minister Modi is back in his third term as Prime Minister. We are asking that with its huge population and a big economy, can India actually become a superpower or a developed country? And if so, what are the challenges? What does India need to do in the years ahead? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta and my colleague Sridharan Ramakrishnan. Welcome to the News9 Plus show, gentlemen. I want to start by asking you this, Sri. You've seen the piece by Martin Wolf in the Financial Times, India, the next superpower, 2047. I think it's something like Ab ki baar 400 par. We are a little ahead of the numbers here.
So, Sandeep, I think it's purely within the realm of the possible, theoretically speaking, because arithmetically, if you look at India's rate of growth, what do we need? We need an 8% rate of growth to sustain for the next, let's say, 25 years. And as a simple back of the envelope calculation will tell you, if we grow at 8%, every 9 years we're developing our, doubling our economy. So we go from 4 to 8, from 8 to 16, and 16 to 32. So it's, statistically speaking, it's pretty much possible. But obviously, when we talk about economy becoming the biggest and India becoming a superpower, there are multiple components to what this big word superpower really implies. So it's not just about the economic heft, it's also about the military strength and also soft power. It's about your acceptance globally in terms of other countries accepting you as a world leader, and that's when you are perceived and recognized as a superpower, right? Absolutely. So multiple things come. And there are many things that can go wrong in this plan of ours. But yes, for now, I think this looks possible.
Sustained growth, almost double-digit growth for nearly 2 decades, Sri. Which is the last country that did that?
So obviously the answer is China, Sandeep. But let us not forget there's a big difference between China and India.
Right.
We are a democracy and at best a rambunctious, a difficult to manage democracy. China, was an authoritarian government. If government said this need to be done, there was no two ways about it. It had to be done. Right. In India, even if a government is performing perfectly well, we've known voters to vote them out. Right. And frankly, given India's poverty levels and the number of people who still have to come into some sort of, a standard of living. For them is the more pressing issue the fact that I need a job, I need food on the table, my kids need to go to school, I need access to healthcare, I need access to water. Is that a bigger issue, or this whole notion of India becoming a superpower?
Absolutely.
So they are not voting based on this whole idea that if we vote for a particular government, we're going to become a superpower.
Right.
They are looking at who's going to give me the next job, who's going to help me.
What's in it for me?
Exactly. So given that situation, we will have a fair share of challenges in meeting this aspiration that we have collectively as a nation, but I think it's doable.
Absolutely, it's doable. Let's ask Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta this. He's represented India in the World Trade Organization. Ambassador Dasgupta, what are the challenges really before India to become a developed nation as is being set out? The target of 2047, and I'm acutely conscious of the fact, Sri, that 2047 is just a little over 2 decades away.
That's true.
Well, I agree with my friend, the previous speaker, but I think the growth rate has to be close to 10% for the next 2 decades for us to be considered a high-income economy or a developed economy. As far as the economists are concerned, some economists say that between $12,000 and $15,000 per capita would be sufficient to consider a country as a developed economy. Others say that it has to be at least $25,000 to $30,000.
Right.
Our per capita is at the moment 125 in terms of PPP and 136 in terms of nominal GDP.
Right.
Now, we have a long way to catch up. The second aspect of becoming a developed economy also is about the Human Development Index. We stand at 134 out of 193 at the moment.
Right.
Our HDR has just turned around 0.65. In 2021, we had a dip for about 2 years and then we started moving up. Now, this HDI considers three factors basically: literacy rate, access to education, and access to healthcare. And countries which have a score, the maximum score is about 1. Norway is very close to 1. But countries which are below 0.9 or 0.85 or so, they are not at the same time developed countries as well.
Right.
Qatar, which has a very high per capita income of about $62,000, has not been considered a developed country because its HDI is very low. So there are various facets to this
Absolutely. The
problem.
multiple, yes.
Yes, becoming a superpower is, as the previous speaker has mentioned, you have a strong military, you have an overall very strong GDP growth and GDP.
Yes.
Then you can have weapons and you can dominate, you can give loans to poor countries, and you can make your presence felt also
Right.
through your soft power. But in order to become a developed economy, these are some of the criteria which you'll have to meet.
Sri, you know, you were talking about China a little while ago. The Chinese model is most interesting, that you have a state-controlled economy that's actually a capitalist economy, a communist, a communist dictatorship that's converted it into a free market capitalist country. But the thing is that while the China and India connections are always made, comparisons are always made, look at the differences in the exports. If you're looking at 2022, China accounted for 17% of the global exports. India was just 2.2%. And if you're looking at commercial services, the export of commercial services, the US is 12%, China is just behind it at 6%, and India is, again, just around 4%. So there's literally a long road ahead of us.
No doubt about it, Sandeep, on that count. We are at best a 4 trillion economy.
Yes.
China is 18 trillion. US is 27 trillion.
Right.
So there's a huge gap between the number 2 and number 3 and number 1.
Yes.
But what is happening is US is growing at, let's say, a best 2%.
Right.
Okay. So which means they're going to take 36 years to double their economy.
Yes.
China is growing at, let's say, at best a 4% annual growth rate scenario. So which means China is going to take at least another 18 years, to double its economy. Whereas India at 4 trillion is growing at, let's say, if it manages to grow at 8 to 10%, then we can really rapidly catch up with these two countries. I think that is the premise. Arithmetically, at least, there is assumption that statistically, if you look at it, it's in the realm of the possibility. Like I like to say that, it's in the realm of the possibility. Yes. But for that to happen, there are so many million pieces that need to be in place. We need to achieve as a country. Right. This whole question of if we have this whole challenge of what we're saying jobless growth, although there's more and more data which is coming saying that there is growth happening. Yes. The latest PNFS data survey also suggests that there's a strong growth happening. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence in terms of gig economy creating a lot of jobs. Because the story one hears time and again from whether it's an agriculture, entrepreneur, or it's from a small unit, that the biggest challenge is hiring labor.
Right.
So if there is unemployment, where are these people? Is it then a skill shortage?
There's a skill shortage, there's a labor shortage.
So we have to identify
labor.
the issues and address them for us to be able to grow at 8 to 10%.
Right.
Consistently for a period of 20-25 years.
Yes.
That's when you become, let's say, a superpower, a large economic superpower.
A large economic superpower. And, as you mentioned, and Ambassador Dasgupta was saying so as well, the fact that we possibly wouldn't be a power, we'd be a great power, but unlikely to be the power that the United States is, a global superpower which projects its military power across the world, or even, for that matter, even China. We are unlikely to be a Chinese superpower which is spread across Asia. We're pretty much self-contained. We're very happy with our place in life. We're very inward looking, and we've always been traditionally that way for thousands of years. So it doesn't seem to be changing. But see, coming back to 2024, what are your expectations from the union budget this time around? It's going to be very closely watched for many many reasons.
Absolutely. So my big worry, Sandeep, is that we still don't see a significant uptick in private sector investment.
Right.
So what does it mean? It means that the government still needs to keep spending.
Yes.
And mercifully and fortunately for India, I think our fiscal situation is pretty comfortable right now. So the finance minister has some room to actually expand and invest in infrastructure. So I do expect the government to keep pushing the investment in infrastructure. That will be a big thrust, and that will have a beneficial effect on the overall economy.
Yes.
But the fact remains that we do need private sector investment to catch up, especially if we are going to grow our exports.
Yes.
So private sector needs to come in. And FDI also been dipping last 2 years for India. We need to see an uptick, hopefully with a stable Modi government coming back, 3.0 coming back to power.
Right.
I think there will be greater confidence in global investors to invest in India and increase their investment plans. But it also depends on what is happening globally. So if you have a Europe which is still grappling with the slowdown, a US which is growing fairly good, but China is slowing down.
Yes.
So India operates in an interconnected world.
Yes.
So how the global trend pans out is also inevitably affect us.
Yes.
So we cannot continue to grow at 8 to 10% if the rest of the world is slowing down.
That's right.
So that is the challenge for us, Sandeep.
A big worry indeed, Sri, and I'm going to ask Ambassador Dasgupta this. Ambassador Dasgupta, expectations from the Union Budget 2024. When you're talking of developed India by 2047, what are the big changes that you would like to see in the Union Budget that would make this a possibility? Given the fact that private sector investment is down, it's for various reasons over the last couple of years, the government that's doing the bulk of the spending. How do you get the private sector to spend more, invest more in India?
I think you have raised several questions. As far as the government spending is concerned, I would like to have a few priorities listed out. The first one is that infrastructure building must carry on in the same spirit and with the same gusto, because that will provide employment opportunities, that will provide economic growth. The second aspect is that we need to pay a lot of attention to reform our primary and middle school education system, and if possible the secondary, up to the secondary level. And at the secondary level, we need to provide this apprenticeship and training and direct linkage with the industry. This is extremely important. It's just not enough to turn out millions of high school children with no skills which can be absorbed in the industry. So that is the third thing. The last point which I wanted to mention in this context is about healthcare. If you have malnutrition at such levels as exist in India, and then you also have a lot of morbidity, which means that people fall sick and cannot go to work, then the workforce itself, can't be very productive. So that is the last point. Healthcare needs to be put on priority basis, and for the poor people, for the less fortunate people, it has to be from the government sector. It has to be public sector, which has to provide this. Now, as far as the private sector is concerned, why isn't it investing in India? Why is it still sitting on the fence, sometimes investing abroad in other countries? There must be some roadblocks. There must be some perceived problems, risks. Now, we need to have a very open conversation with the industry and find out what is really pinching them. Is it the multiple clearances which are required at the state and the central levels? Is it the Inspector Raj which is still carrying on in some form or the other and harassing industry and especially new entrepreneurs? What is it? Or is it because electricity used to be a problem about 2 decades ago? It is no longer a problem. There is no shortage of electricity. Land is expensive, but then there are other ways of tackling that issue. So what is it that is ailing the industry? What are its expectations and how can they be met?
Absolutely.
And that conversation, the sooner it is held, the better it would.
conversation with the industry, and four very valid points there, Sri, that Ambassador Dasgupta raises. One is, of course, infrastructure building, as you mentioned. The government is going full throttle on that for a decade now. Skilling and education that link employability, skilling up your graduates so that they are employable by the industry. Healthcare, number 3, that's something that's been a chink in our armor for so many years. And number 4, of course, this conversation with the industry that we must have at some point. But health and education, Sri, they've been typically our vulnerabilities. And I think the NEET leaks and all of that is just it's just given us a glimpse into the larger malaise that's affecting the education system. Health and education, what are typically the 2 things that you think the government must do on priority? Because I don't think there's any country in the history of the world that's become a developed country without investing in health and in education.
No, absolutely, Sandeep. I think when it comes to education, I think the first thing we need to do is to make sure that the quality of education that we are providing at the village level and in small towns is on par with what, let's say, we are getting in the urban centers. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because there are n number of studies which tell you that while kids are enrolled in school, their literacy level actually is very low. Many of them cannot even spell the English alphabets or the Hindi alphabets properly. Their arithmetic skill is challenged. So the quality of education has to be consistent across the country. So we need to address the issue of finding quality teachers, a quality education system which can put these children through a proper education. That's where I think China excels dramatically, right? So I think we need to do that first. Similarly, in healthcare, while we have, we are even talking of telemedicine, delivering remote, consultation to remote villages and all those things. But I think the fact that if you go to any clinic in a village, the condition of that is really up to a mark. So I think there are a lot of fundamental issues that we need to address, both on the healthcare and the education front. Once those are put in place, then I think we'll be on track to create a pool of educated and talented people where we talk about the consumer conundrum, but actually there's a employment conundrum as well. On the one hand, people are crying there are no jobs, but if you talk to industry, they say, I don't have enough qualified people to hire. So that conundrum is due to the fact that there's a skill gap.
There's a skill gap indeed.
And that can only be addressed when you have consistent and high quality training that happens at from the kindergarten to going all the way to the university level.
And this has been the success mantra of all the Asian tigers, from Korea to Japan to China and all of that.
That is your building block.
That's the building block indeed. India's mission 2047 won't succeed without these 2 twin engines of health and education. You just heard 2 very learned people on this topic right now, Ambassador Dasgupta and my colleague Sridharan Ramakrishnan. Thank you for joining us this evening on this topic of India's Mission 2047. With the union budget coming up, we're going to watch it very carefully for the kind of investments that India is going to make in health and education, the twin engines that will power India to 2047.